So can you define what an audiophile is for me?
Audiophiles are looking for as much fidelity as they can get in listening to audio systems. So they want to be able to hear recordings as faithfully and as accurately as possible.
So do you consider yourself an audiophile?
I do. I'm an audiophile who tries to get the ultimate sound through building up flexible systems with a lot of signal processing and a lot of control, and then measuring and adjusting and calibrating. So yes, I consider myself an audiophile, but I'm more of an audiophile with a pro audio kind of bent as opposed to more of the home audiophile, which is more about less. I My audio system starts first with the space. I actually had the luxury of going into an unfinished basement and building the room itself first, because the room you listen to music and sound in has everything to do with influencing that music and sound. So I was able to work from a concrete floor and cinder block walls and no ceiling to a specialized drop ceiling with a high noise reduction coefficient. It doesn't reflect a lot of sound, and a lot of sound doesn't get through it to bother people in the rest of the house, which is important. Extra heavy padding and carpeting on a concrete floor, which makes it a good combination of non-resonant and low dams. Cinder block walls with stud walls built out with insulation with a kind of covering on those walls called dense armor, which is like super heavy drywall with a porous finish that doesn't reflect sound, so that the walls are like high in mass, so they don't resonate and they don't reflect sound like a normal room. So, and then being able to run all the electricity and all the new clean circuits I needed for the power. So the first thing I did was build the space, and that's very much part of the system. And then after that, I custom design speakers. So what is different about my space than your average audiophile space is it's always rotating through different designs and different prototypes and different iterations. So I've got a range of speakers that go from being 6 feet tall and 300 and 400 pounds and just ridiculously oversized sort of like monuments to sound, to trying to get as much sound as possible out of these very tiny kinds of designs. So a range of small to large. But the one thing that I do it's not unique, but it's uncommon, is I work on open baffle speaker designs where there's no box. It's essentially, at the end of the day, it could be described as a board or a baffle where sound comes out the front and comes out the back, and there's no box or chamber attempting to control the back wave of the drivers. Yeah, so I broke a front end of Jeep with a design that I built. This is going to sound way over the top. So one of the ideas of box speakers, traditional box designs, is you just want to hear the electrical signal, but you don't want any box resonance. And one way to get rid of box resonance is just to simply make it heavier. So the heavier the mass, the less it's going to resonate. So I took that idea too far, and I built two 600-pound subwoofers made out of concrete, essentially. So they were stacked in three, so there's like a box, box, box. Each one's concrete, and they couple together to form one bigger subwoofer, and then another side, box, box, box. So the first thing that happened was I had them on the second story of a house, which was cantilevered out over a porch. And when the ceiling started to crack, we realized that the cantilever of the house was starting to tip because of the weight that wasn't properly supported. So we had to jack up the front of the house and put new pillars on the porch. And the second thing that happened was we moved from I moved to a place that the speakers had to go up 3 flights of stairs, and at 200 pounds, a section times 6 ultimately. The friend that was helping me carry them got a hernia, and the Jeep that I borrowed to move them in broke a leaf spring. So all in the pursuit of building the tightest, cleanest space in the cabinets that would not resonate in any way to make the cabinet disappear, so that you only heard what the driver was doing. I created these um, insanely heavy monstrosities that just did more damage than good. And I've designed from that point on nothing anywhere near that heavy, having learned the lesson that yes, mass equals damping, but it's just not worth the lack of mobility that you get when you build something that's that heavy.
What happened to them ultimately?
At the end of the day, I pulled the drivers out of them and threw the cabinets out on the curb, and the big trash pickup day trucks came along and picked them up with their big scooper and threw the cabinets in the back of a giant dump truck. And so I pirated the 12-inch. It was 3 12-inch woofers per side, each one in their own separate module, and I pirated the woofers for another speaker design down the road, and I tossed them. At that point, I was married. I built them before I was married, and after I was married, and we'd moved from one house to a second house. My wife suggested that maybe it was time to do without that kind of additional baggage. So,
And lastly, would you consider audiophiles to be a unique community?
I'm finding that everybody is their own version of an audiophile. What I mean by that is some people take wine seriously to the point where they'll really go out of their way to make sure that they have experiences that really satisfy that desire. Some people are into coffee to the point where they'll really push that. Some people are into interior design, and they'll do everything they can in their environment and surroundings to reach this aesthetic. And other people are just really into games, and they'll just push it and push it and push it and push it. So I find that the human nature impulse to take something past the normal range of extreme to the extreme is common. Within that, audiophiles are just as over the top as any other person might be in their related category of over the top. With that being said, audiophiles have unique needs, and it's usually the ability to have total control over a space and the ability to really work on pursuing additional, like always trying to improve, always like searching for better and trying to make their quest for what their definition of the ultimate sound is. They're going further. And I find one thing audiophiles do is they'll spend a lot of time and money and energy into changes that are so subtle and so minute that most people couldn't hear the difference at all, and the audiophiles themselves are even left wondering if it's any better or not. Like investing in RCA cables that are $1,000 for a 3-foot RCA cable, when perhaps the $2 one that came for free with any old electronics junk is comparably doing the same thing, right? But in the audiophile mind, there's a justification that additional expense is worth it because of the possibility that it's like 1,000th of 1% better than the music would have been otherwise, right? So like the willingness to shell out way more time, effort, money, and blood, sweat, and tears for like tiny incremental gains that are almost imperceptible, that seems to be like a common weird thing that sets audiophiles apart from other areas of fetish, I guess.